Willkommen, one and all. Welcome, I should say, in English, to Austria. Just to catch everyone who didn't do German GCSE. My name's Hardu Dragon, joined by AO once again. This season for BUSR keeps on and coming. Cameron's won the last 3 races, but can he make it a 4th around Austria? The Red Bull Ring for the man driving in the Red Bull. AO, it is going to be a set of short laps today. We'll have qualifying in just a bit, 36 laps after this short qualifying. Tell me, what can we expect today?
Well, the second half of the season for the Springs Championship is well underway here, and no better track to start off the second half of this championship than arguably what is the fastest track on the calendar at the moment. Austria is really special because it has the least amount of corners on the track, and it's also one of the shortest that we have on the calendar, which means that for qualifying here in this short session that we're going to expect, we can see some blistering fast times. And not only that, but a really close deficit. And given that Joe has been on pole position for the past 2 races, he's definitely going to look to make it a 3rd.
We're going to be possibly breaking 2 streaks today. Can someone dethrone Cameron from the top of the timing sheets at the end of the race, and will be someone new be sitting on pole after qualifying? It's the 2 questions that we'll have to answer today, and whether those 2 can keep it coming. I mean, Joe is on a fantastic streak at the moment. He's got 2 podiums this season. He's on track to make it a 3rd. I feel like he's got his confidence back after a shaky 2 races around Canada and Silverstone. So he'll be back trying to get himself a bit more into possibly the title fight. Probably better question is 2nd and 3rd. I mean, if we go to our championship standings at the moment, let's take a look at the season so far a little bit. We got Josh and Cameron as our race winners. Josh around Baku. And the last 3, of course, have been won by Cameron. And, of course, we see Joe's 2 podiums along with Ben getting 3 for himself in the standings. Now, look at the standings to our bottom right. Cameron way ahead, 41 points to the better of both Josh and Ben. So we'll be looking at those 2 be competing to possibly try and dethrone Cameron, as long as there are a few bad races that Cameron has.
Absolutely, and keep an eye on Joe, who's been making very good strides, as you said, building up that confidence. He's definitely going to try and make that a 3-way fight for 2nd place. And for Cameron as well, he knows he's in that danger. He's already 3 race wins, but it's a matter of keeping that consistency, however. And with the remaining 4 races as well, especially here in a fast track like Austria, his win is definitely not at all sure here in the Red Bull Ring.
Yeah, when you get to these shorter tracks, the time differences that you get are minute. It is about being on the brakes at the right point, getting off the brakes, getting the power down. It's going into every single one of these corners. It is going to be the tiny fragments of time lost that build up to what ends up being our pole position, our runner-up in qualifying, and it'll carry over to the race. These guys will be hunting for perfection today, because that is going to be what gets you on pole, with everyone else chasing you down. There is very little room for error, in my opinion, around the shorter tracks, because there is so few things that can go right, and what can go wrong will make you up the time, what doesn't. So at the end of the day, these guys are going to be on best form around the Spielberg circuit.
Absolutely. We saw this before as well back in round 2 in Montreal, where, the top 4 was split by just about 6/10 from that position back then. So the fact that Austria, as we mentioned before, very short track, these differences that these drivers would have is absolutely minuscule. So that means that whoever grabs pole position here would definitely be really, really advantageous coming into this race. And, the unique thing about Austria as well is that it's got 3 consecutive back-to-back DRS straights. So that means that even though the person that might be starting on pole might have a big advantage at the start, once that DRS comes out, they really are a marked driver.
It'll be looking for people trading the DRS advantage, unless someone gets out into the lead and gets away from everyone else. So take a look at the Spielberg circuit and who will start moving first. Only about 2.6 miles around the F1 track here in the Red Bull Ring. And honestly, along with Spa, one of the most picturesque tracks you could ever imagine. I mean, last week we had Kota, which has the beautiful setting sun around qualifying, which does blind drivers. But if you just have a snapshot of it, it looks fantastic as you look up the hill and see the sun as it sets. Around here, it is all about the beautiful mountains that surround the circuit and the mountains that is set in, as we do see the first few drivers move out onto track. Now, there's about 10 turns, very few in comparison to other tracks. Not very many names that you have to remember around this circuit. Quite a few of them don't have names. So usually we sort of remember it beforehand. There are not many around here that are known, but we do have two F1 drivers having their names at least on this track. We do have turn 1, known as the Niki Lauda turn, and then we got Jochen Rindt at turn number 9. So this penultimate turn of the circuit and the first. I think I have most likely missed a little bit of research in terms of the other turns and the reasoning for their names, but I can't wait for that to be told after the race today as we go out on track. I believe we have Quicks who will be starting off the race times today. Someone who's done some decent performances this year. Can it be his time on pole? Can he get the momentum going through? Heading into the Niki Lauda turn 1. Taking a little bit of the apex. I realised last week when I was actually doing my runs invoice, didn't manage to get any done today. But that front curb, you kind of want to avoid it. It's one of the turns you just sort of avoid going a little bit too much on the inside to gain a little bit of time as he enters the first DRS section of this track. No, second. Thinking about it wrong. I thought it was the home stretch, but no, it is after the Niki Lauda turn. Heading through this sweeping section. There's Quicks setting the first time today in sector 2, 45 seconds after the timing in sector 2 into sector 3. One of the shortest parts, the shortest sectors that you'll see on the F1 calendar. Dropping down just into 7th, down into 5th here. And down to the home stretch. What will be the first lap time set today? It will be a 1 minute 4.4 for Quicks. Good start for today's timing.
It is really good. You can just see how much of these drivers are going to need to use the curb as much as possible, because Austria is one of these tracks where the more curb you use, the better your advantage will be. However, they need to be very wary of turn 1 because of that sausage curb. It can easily unstable a car and cause it to spin. We've seen it before in ACC just back in Monday. Actually, we've had 3 accidents that race back then with the GT3s, and F1 being a lot lighter than those GT3 cars are, that means that they're going to be much more let's say, prone to spinning in those sausage curbs than they are for the GT3s. So that's something that all these 14 drivers really need to be very cautious of, not just for the qualifying, but for the race itself.
Atomic Fire will be next to cross the line, 106.9. As next few drivers come through. Ender Epic just behind It's James, who, whilst we were just chatting around about the circuit, about the curbs around here, setting a 104.0 so far. None of our championship runners setting a lap just yet as Ender Epic begins a new run. Taking a look down this, we've got Shinto Aria setting a time. Mad Dog, 3rd place in the last split, setting a time. Where will it be? Just behind It's James. Around Austria, I believe we do have our championship leader out on circuit, as well as Dasher, one of the drivers who not been involved with many races. It seems to be alternating weeks at the moment. Will be involved today as well. Been some very good performances as well from Dasher, being quite a nuisance for a lot of these top drivers, taking away a few points here and there.
He's been absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely, definitely to say for sure. Talking about the deficit, though, Mad Dog and It's James, though, is about 0.05 of a tenth, and we can expect that deficit to go even further as soon as these drivers put in more laps. As there we go, Aria sets a time which is about a tenth off from Mad Dog's time. Joe gets in. Very strong from him, actually. 5/10 faster. Really, really impressive there by him.
1:03.6 as we're watching Cameron here. Hasn't invalidated time, but of course, I think he's just waiting for a little bit of clean air as he watches drivers pass. As there we go, he's picking up speed now, heading towards Rind and through to the Red Bull Mobile, I believe that you informed me it was. Being very deep into that corner, taking all that pace down the home stretch, and now we'll be setting a time. Of course, that 1:29 is definitely not representative of what we'll see from the championship leader out through the Niki Lauda corner, and it's turn 1 out towards turns 2 and 3. The tiny little kink there, the tiny little chicane that these drivers will go through. It's barely even a corner at all. It's one of those that gets labeled as 1, past 3, down towards 4 to take the next DRS section down to 4, looking towards 5 and 6, the of course sweeping section of the circuit. Quite a few tracks have these sort of back-to-back corner sections, so you do drop down to about 5th gear there and move up to 6th as you head towards the final section. I believe that unfortunately is an invalidated lap for Cameron to start off proceedings today. So our championship leader not setting a time with the first lap. We'll be moving into pit lane to get some fresh rubber and back out on track.
Have you noticed it's the first time in a while that Cameron Searle has set a first run on actual soft tires? Usually he would go on the intermediates.
That is quite weird. I would imagine with a circuit like this, it would be prime conditions for him to have an inters lap and then go for a serious one. I mean, we are looking at a 1:05 track and thereabouts a 1:03 run. So you've got plenty of time to go around and get that joking lap in before you set a new one. Josh does set a valid time, but I think it's going to be his next one that will be blistering as we'll start to follow him around and watch the man currently sitting in joint second in the standings, heading down to turns 2 and 3 and in towards the first DRS zone on the circuit. Down towards the next set of turns, this sort of complex into sector 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 in this sector 2 section. No new time set. It is still sitting in the 1:04s, 1:03s sorts of times. As Josh taking 12 seconds off. Of course, that first run not really counting for much. That will end up putting in the 1:07s, if that is to be trusted. But we do have the last few corners here through Rin, through the mobile. It's Josh going wide, using all the track down to the home stretch. 1:03.7 puts him on P2. Good start for the championship contender around the Austrian Spielberg circuit.
Said it there, using the curbs much of the area of the track as he possibly can, and it's paid great dividends for him because he gets himself up into P2, with Joe and Wooly being the title contenders, setting pretty valid lap times, I must say. So that's good. It's going to be interesting to see though for... Oh yeah, Ben's not here today, I just realized. So he's not actually going to score points. So this is actually going to be very advantageous there to Willie to try to maintain second place. But for Joe, if he keeps on to this and maybe gets his third pole position here, maybe it might pay huge. As you see for Cameron though, going out for the final corner, using as much curb as he possibly can. That's going to be his outlap. He's now going to set his fast time now. See how he got out of that curb from the final corner. He's trying to maximize that top speed for turn 1. And now he's going to use the DRS now. And then swiftly goes through turn 2 and then going to brake very heavily through turn 3. All the traffic clearing out the way for the championship leader.
Next DRS section. That rear wing flap will open now, allowing the air to pass through such a fast circuit. It'll be dropping down to about gear 4th around this section, 5th to 4th, as we move towards the next few corners. Cameron hoping to set a very fast time, a blistering time, get himself past Joe. Do not deal with two drivers in front of you, especially when one is sitting P2 in the standings. We'll get a good advantage and avoid tying the standings at all. Cameron around Rind into the Red Bull Mobile. What time will be set? Going a little bit wide there, but I don't think that'll bother him too much.
It did.
200ths, maybe a little bit of bothering going too wide there, but we'll be seeing P2 on the current timesheet for qualifying.
It did. That corner going wide really impacted him from that 200ths out of that final corner. Back to area now, out from the final corner, is going to try and do improvement. It is a bit of improvement. It's a 200ths improvement, and it's up to P8 for him. As we now see with Joe, he's going to now set his flying lap now, since that Cameron Sorrell has responded. Still making to make a three-peat now, as Ender Epic out for the final corner. He's going to try and set his lap. I think was invalid. Last gen Newt.
Not improving, but I believe this is just going to be an outlap going into a second lap. I mean, the positives of a short circuit is you can just have almost a warm-up lap before you absolutely send it on the next one. As I believe Joe, that's what he could be doing here as he enters the Sector 2 section. We have Geek on the screen now, also trying to set a time, but unfortunately he'll be just waiting, I think, for the next lap. Or choosing to move in. He is on the inside, so I believe this is Geek moving back into the pit lane, and we'll be putting on some fresh tyres as well. Aria not opting for the pit lane. This will be a time, I believe. No, taking a very different line to fool us, as Joe is moving down to the start-finish straight. We'll be setting a new time, a faster one than his previous. Yes, it will. 103.6 from Joe, to move just a little bit further away from Cameron in the standings, trying to make sure he gets that pole position again. Ender Epic now challenging for the front row, make a small improvement, and stays in P6 in the standings.
500ths now that Cameron needs to try and find to himself. And Joe now, last year Newt gets a very good improvement, actually 9/10ths, nearly a full 10th in Austria, which is really massive, and gets himself up into 6th.
Very quick changes of camera angle, as we're still watching quite a few drivers set laps out at the moment. I wonder who's going to set the most laps around this circuit. Like I said, we got a 1:03 lap, so I'm expecting we'll see quite a few runs from these drivers, not only to just get a feel of the track, but just simply set as many times as possible to try and get as high in the standings as we can, as we are entering the last 5 minutes. It has been an absolutely blistering qualifying from everyone, time after time being set from all of these drivers. Finn, the last one to set a time, going through Rind, down towards the Red Bull Mobile. No, opting for the pit lane, not quite to his likings that lap. Did look like it was actually going to be a half-decent one to set time with. Alpha, down through the last 2 corners. What time will this be? Will this be improvement on the 1:04.9? Yes, taking 4/10ths off, but not quite enough to move up past Quicks in the timing sheets.
The man that finished back in the podium is still in 12th. Now for Willie, though, coming up through the final corner, he's going to try and set his fast lap now. I think Ender Epic will do as well. So both of them, keep an eye out for them. As actually, no, he actually invalidated, my bad. Cameron Sorrell, he's going to start his second fly lap now, exit out for the final corner. He knows what the gap is between himself and Joe, and he needs to try and find a way to claw that in.
See if he can. It is not much separating the two at the top of the leaderboard with the times. Only about 5/100ths of a second between the two of them, as that will be a little bit of a gain going through the first sector. I don't think this is going to be good enough for Cameron, so he might just back out at this point and go for the next one. Just drive through this first out lap and start setting a new one next. So we have a few looking to set their final times. Dasher, James, Aria, Geek, and Quicks, and Finn, all on outlaps at the moment. Joe will join them as well. We are looking to head towards the last 3 minutes of qualifying. Josh looking to be setting another time, 1/10 off through Sector 2, and sets the new pole with a 2/10 advantage over Joe and Cameron. A blistering time to be set by one of the championship contenders. How will Cameron be able to respond through this next lap? Cameron will be starting a new lap. Mad Dog will be looking to continue advancing up this leaderboard with another lap set, trying to get away from Dasher just a little bit, only 200ths, also separating the two drivers in fourth and fifth. Then we got the Papayas in 6th and 7th, the other Ferrari in 8th, Aria, the Alpha Tauri, with Josh in 9th, Geek, the Red Bull, with Ryan Gosling, aka Cameron, in P3, and Geek in P10, Quicks, the Alpine, 11th, Alpha in 12th, Atomic and Finn at the back in the Mercedes. Finn still yet to set a time yet. He might be struggling around this Spielberg circuit. James taking another just tiny bit off his own time and won't be progressing up the leaderboard.
Here comes Cameron coming up for the final corner now, through turn 9 now, over through turn 10. Again, this is going to be his best chance now to get some positions gained. He does it, and he gets himself up into provisional pole. 2/10 faster than Josh.
Ender Epic also setting a new best time and taking 2/10 off, but I think it was just invalidated at the time. I don't see it reflected on my screen. Quicks taking another 2/10 off as well. Everyone's slow but surely getting a little bit faster, but I tell you what, that is absolutely stunning from Cameron as well. Finn, hopefully about to set a time. It has been a struggle this qualifying with 1:25 to go. Finn does cross the line, a 1:05.9 to start off. And it'll send back to P14, last on the grid. Dasher looking to set a faster time, does a 10th off, moves up to P4. Currently, the front two rows, Cameron, Josh, Joe, and Dasher, as we are entering the last bit of qualifying, possibly the last laps for all of these drivers.
Here comes Joe coming out from turn 8 now. The provisional pole sitter last time round for what was a few minutes. He actually invalidated coming out from turn 8, cut too much of the curb, and I don't think he'll have enough time to improve, so he's only going to stay third. That's his pole position streak over. So now it's only going to be Cameron now.
No, Joe's going for another. I think
he is going to go for another. He is going to go for another. Okay, that's going to be very interesting. So he's going to have one last attempt to make 4/10 now.
Let's take a look at Joe. Let's follow him around this final lap. I think this will be the final contender to the championship leader at the moment for pole position, and for him to keep his streak alive throughout this season, heading through the first few corners of the circuit, heading down towards turns 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is Joe out through the first DRS section into sector 2, goes a little bit wide through those corners, and now in towards the sweeping 5 and 6 section. Round the first, in towards sector 3, he's taking just 2300ths of a second off his time. That won't be enough with the 10th advantage thereabouts. Advantage that Cameron has through Rind, out towards the final section. Joe, what time will be set? And they'll know it's going too wide. 103.7 across the line. Of course, he just took back absolute pressure on the accelerator at the end there. And Cameron, Geek, I should say, spins into the wall. Cameron will cross the line. And there you have it. Joe's pole running streak is over. Cameron is P1 around Spielberg.
Yeah, congratulations to Cameron. It's his first pole since Canada. So this is like his second short circuit pole position that he's got, which again just shows like whenever tracks are much, much shorter, he can always persevere. And there's so much harder to gain pole positions in moments like these. And the fact that he's done it for the second time in a short circuit, congrats to him.
Yeah, full concentration towards that lap. I mean, I think he might have felt a little bit off not setting an Inter's time to start off today's proceedings. So it might have been a little bit off kilter to start off his timings, but of course he got it together. What can you expect from the championship leader other than finding the top of the timing sheet? So fantastic work from qualifying as, oh my goodness, it's a downpour. You know, AO, we talk about rain almost every single week and say that it could be a factor. Today, it's a factor. Like, I've just seen it load into the race screen and is an absolute deluge around Austria. So what is an extremely fast circuit in itself, very short times. It is going to be slowed up today thanks to rain. We're going to see earlier braking times. And that turn 1, oh, it could be catching a lot of people out. We're looking at these sharp corners. I'm thinking turns 1 and 3. Those are going to get people just really braking hard going into them. 2 very sharp corners. And of course, it should be said, turn 10. I mean, track limits is a massive thing coming out of turns 9 and 10. We saw it in the real life 2024 Austrian Grand Prix that everyone was going wide. We were talking about track limits. I think it was more of 2023, actually, that we're talking about track limits. In 2024, they tried to sort them. We're might see a similar thing today where everyone is sort of not expecting the rain to be as much of a factor going through those corners, take it too fast, and they're off track. And we could be seeing a lot of warnings today being made, and a lot of people struggling in the rain. So finally, we have a little bit of drama with it around this Austrian circuit.
Yeah, turns 1, 3. I think 4 as well will also be a pretty big factor as well. And 9 and 10, you said from those track limits as well. If they just go off from that track limits, there's a lot less grip on the racing off the track from 9 and 10 than there is on the track. So that means that it's much more prone to aquaplane if you it's also the curbs that they need to be worried about, because we saw from qualifying, being on the curbs is where you go fast here, but because it holds so much water up in the track, you really need to avoid the curbs as much as you can. So for a lot of these drivers, I think Cameron Sill is really lucky to be starting in pole position, to be honest with you, because it's really hard to overtake 1, 3, 4, and then 10 while in the wet, because they're really hard braking zones. You need to be very cautious whenever you brake under the wet weather. But man, this is just going to be so exciting for the next 36 laps. If the downpour does continue, that is. I
am hoping we see a crossover at some point. I am hoping that we have that sort of race where every single strategy and tactic needs to be brought into question for these drivers. I think this is already advantage Cameron, but knowing what everyone says in voice chat after like the Grand Prix are done, before them, no one's going to have practiced in wet weather. No, I know for certain that people are going to be like, they're not going to say, oh my goodness, I practiced for this. This is what I've been waiting for all season, to do some wet weather driving. No, everyone has practiced this circuit in the dry. They've been doing time trials in the dry. They've not even looked at the blue and green tires. They're going to just been thinking about the red, yellow, and white tires. That's it. That's all they've been thinking about. So all of a sudden, we have this massive curveball being thrown at each and every single one of them as this formation lap starts. Well, it's quite easy to talk about the strategy today. It's full wets in terms of the tire strategy to start off with. And I think with the 36 laps, we are most likely going to be seeing the exact same tires in use. Who's going to be the tire whisperer and who is going to spin out around this circuit? As there you go. There's likely one change onto other wet tires. So that's probably what we're going to see today from every single one of them out on track, as they are already lining up after the formation lap is completed. AO, we have asked for rain constantly throughout every single one of these Grand Prix to spice things up, make things interesting, and finally we get some, and it's around Austria. Everyone lined up, everyone ready to go. Chaotic's not here, so we won't see any early starters to get out of their pit box. It is just going to be 5 red lights. We'll tick them off slowly. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And it's lights out, and away they go around Austria. Cameron starting off quickly enough, getting into P1 and remaining in P1. Josh and Joe Joe being blocked up, Dasher staying on the inside, both of them going two at a time. We see a little bit of commotion at the back as tires are bumping together in the wet weather. Cameron's getting a 4/10 lead. Drivers slowly but surely getting into single file. They know the drill now as one going down the inside, going very deep into the corner and going into the side of, I think, Aria on the track. There's going to be big damage, possibly to the floor of Aria, unfortunately, going into turn 3. Joe overtaking on the inside, going down into this section as they sweep round. Josh will move down the leaderboard. We still have fights going on up and down the timesheets, but the important one is there. Joe moving up into P2, Josh in P3, Dasher in P4, Aria just about sticking around in P5.
Just seeing there with Alpha completely misjudged his braking point in an end, collaborated against two other cars in turn 3. That was the kind of mistakes that we were seeing. But look at that with Cameron Soto. He's already 1.3 second with the lead, and without any DRS to hold him back now, it really is, he just needs to bring it home in this point to extend his championship lead now. Seeing for the damage though, no one has come into the pit, so that damage from Geek is not as serious as we imagined. So heading down for turn 1 now, that's lap 1 complete out of 36.
Yeah, I think the only question is it going to be floor damage for Aria? I mean, it was a clattering into the side from Alpha, and if he has somehow avoided front wing damage from all that, or at least maybe just lime green damage that you see in the F1 game, I think him going wide there, it might be a telltale sign that either he's lacking a bit of wet weather practice that we talked about, or there is something going on the front wing. Could be an issue that he faces later on in this race, as we do see one Papaya car move past. Of course, with 14 drivers today, everyone will be scoring points. It's just going to be about where you end up, and Cameron is already 2 seconds up at the front of the timesheet. Alpha looking to go down the inside and won't have enough time, as Quicks will just continue to sit in between both of the McLaren cars around turns 5 and turns 6 and 7, I should say, as everyone just going to have to slowly get used to every bit of this circuit. I'll look forward to the interviews after to see what their reaction were to seeing pouring rain on the formation lap, and what their reaction to it too, and whether they were expecting to have to put on the blue tires today at all. Joe still losing time behind Cameron at the front of the grid. Today truly is a Ryan Gosling race, as he'll be looking to just drive today, get the job done, continue the win streak, and move it up to 4.
Absolutely, but it's then he's just not that safe yet though, as now Ender Epic just holding on through, of almost making a move on Quixotical. But yeah, all that Cameron really needs to do now is just keep it on track and just really bring it home and just keep it safe. That's all he really needs to do. Don't take any necessary risks and don't go very fast. Here we go, wheel to wheel between Quixotical and Last Gen Nuke. Now Last Gen Nuke's going to do the inside line and makes it stick, and Quixotical just about defends from Ender Epic to hold down to P10. It needs to be very careful, these people going wheel to wheel, because if there's a collision, then they're instantly veered off into the gravel chop there in turn 4. So that's going to be really, really interesting to see there as the Mercedes kind of trade positions a bit.
You know what? I was watching the move, almost getting lined up going into turn number 3, and all I could remember is the move from Alpha going completely wrong. I think that might have scarred everyone from trying to make a move down that apex of a corner, that just hairpin, I should say, and trying to take the apex. It's incredibly difficult to make a move down there. I mean, we saw it in real life last season. We had Max and Lando having a little bit of a collision there, a little bit of a scuffle in terms of the fight for the lead. And we almost saw the same thing today, as it looks like Ender Epic will be still lining up a move, this time down the outside. No, going a little bit wide, I think, across this corner, staying on the inside, actually. Couldn't really see from that camera angle. It's not great. Oh, that's a bit of front wing. I just saw a bit of front wing just fly off. Whose is it?
Yeah, that's James. It's James, I think.
James.
He's got no front wing.
No front wing. That's gone. So he's going to have to make an early pit stop and remain on the wet tires. There's no real advantage at this point of coming in early at any point. It's just going to be about getting slightly fresher wet tires for the rest of the race. Up front, it's boring again. Cameron has got a 3-second lead. Let's stay away from that fight. There's nothing going on there. What I will bring up is Geek is just behind Dasher. It's about a 6th, 10th gap. We also have this fight for 8th, 9th and 10th as Geek will follow Dasher through the last few corners. Here's back to that fight between the two McLarens and the Alpine, as it's James has unfortunately sacrificed that fight with a front wing loss. Quicks will be trying to chase down Last Gen Ute to gain a bit of position. We also have 6th and 7th, Aria and Mad Dog. Those two have a little bit of a fight going on, as I'm basically looking down, up and down this timesheet and looking for gaps that are less than a second. That could be a fight as Dasher and Geek. Geek not quite making the move there, but will stay on the gearbox as we head down to turn number 4. Will he be looking for a move here? No, I think just a little bit too far back, and especially in the wet weather. I think everyone's had a warning shot from Alpha to not try and make the big moves. Just get close, get up next to someone and make the move that way. Force them wide just a little bit and make them give you room. That's what we'll be looking for in terms of the overtakes today, and that's what we'll be looking for the fights up and down the grid. But we are seeing quite a few close battles between drivers. As I said, Dasher and Geek, Aria and Mad Dog, and of course this battle in between now just Quicks and Ender. Those two are going to be battling today, I reckon.
Yeah, the other like advantage or disadvantage, I suppose, for some drivers in the positions, no DRS, because DRS is not allowed in the wet weathers, so it makes defending a little bit that more easier for these drivers to hold and maintain their positions and to not get pulled away into such slipstream trains as well, which Austria is really notorious for, because again, 3 DRS straights here. Here we go with Geek and Dasher now. This is for P4. He's going to even do it before even turn 3 even happens now. He's going to get the racing line now through it, and that's a great move there from Geek. He gets himself up into P4. Wow, he's gained so many positions. And now he might be on the move for Josh now.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see that timing gap delta be closed down slowly but surely over this race. Already Dasher still remaining behind Geek. That's still going to be a factor throughout the rest of this race.
Got someone out. Alpha.
Aria and Mad Dog, I think, is going to be the next fight that we look at. Only a 2/10 gap as Mad Dog trying to take a little bit more of an inside line and challenge Aria to the battle here. Aria moving a little bit off track. I don't think will be enough for a track limits warning as we move through 7 and 8 down towards Rind. Who is going to blink first between these two? I think Mad Dog just needs to put pressure on Aria. I think he's just the calmer driver out of the two of them and the slightly more consistent. And we say all this, Last Gen U has managed to get to the back of this queue. Mad Dog needs to make a move now, lest we see Last Gen U overtake a few people. We see a double penalty for Quicks and Ender Epic. We go down to Lauda. Still, Aria maintaining that lead over these two drivers, but we're going to see more of a fight, and I think Aria will be so happy to see if these two fight heading down into turn 3. Mad Dog will stay with Aria here, not making a move just yet, being very, very patient. I would say that's the advantage Mad Dog has over Aria, just the pure patience. We do have plenty of laps remaining for these drivers to make moves against one another. We'll have to see if anything brews a little bit earlier, though. Aria going through turns toward turn 4, down towards 5 and 6. Will there be something brewing towards that home stretch, or will be something be made a little bit earlier? Mad Dog changing the line just a little bit, forcing Aria into more defensive positions, different defensive positions throughout every part of this lap to try and force some sort of mistake. Unfortunately, I think Quick's having a disconnect there, so we'll be back very shortly as Aria and Mad Dog continue to have this battle. And here we go. Ender Epic trying to move down the inside of Quicks. Of course, it's going to be an AI at this point, unless Quicks has managed to join back. They're going side by side through this last corner. And Ender Epic, he's not made it incredibly clean, but he does manage to get past Quicks, at least for the moment, down the home stretch, down towards turn 1. Ender Epic up to P9.
Oh my god, this is for P3, and he's going to go round the inside for turn 2 now. He's going to do another carbon copy of this move for turn 3. He's done it once again. Giga up into P3.
My goodness, Geek is on a rampage. The two Red Bulls have realized the circuit's name and need to put on a show today, as both of them in podium positions, both of them in fantastic positions in a wet race to make something happen. Quicks is back now, so we'll be looking towards that 9th and 10th battle as well again. See if Quicks is able to catch up. Looking up and down the order, there's no fights happening just yet. Every driver just following each other along. It's all about keeping that consistency, keeping the head on your shoulders, and maintaining every bit of consistency that you have in mind. Aria and Last Gen Newt now. That's the fight going on. I think there's been a swap over between the Papaya and the Alfa Romeo down the order, as I don't think Aria and Last Gen Newt will want to waste any time in that battle. Last Gen Newt will just want to make the pass as he's closed it down the gap, at least for a moment. So we are following along Geek here. Going into turn 1 has already got a second lead. Here's Aria and Last Gen Newt. Last Gen Newt will not be sizing up a move into this first corner. We'll just be looking, I think, for this upcoming chicane and upcoming turn number 3. Stays on the gearbox. Will the move be made here and now for Last Gen Newt to continue his blast up towards the front, moving down towards the inside, and just pulls out, just decides he needs to wait a moment for Aria to make another mistake. Does have the overspeed. We looking to move on to a side-by-side position, but Aria shuts that down very quickly. You are not getting past me today. Tries to cover off onto the outside. Last Gen Newt staying with Aria as we move towards turn 6 and 7. Mad Dog now invited back into the fight between these three. This is going to be the battle that we watch today, I reckon. This is going to be the battle that has fireworks. Aria has Last Gen Newt on the gearbox again. No move available just yet for Last Gen Newt, but again, it's a case of the pressure being put on the opposing numbers against you. Aria will move down towards Rin now, followed by Last Gen Newt. Mad Dog just behind. I think he's just waiting for maybe something to happen between these two drivers and just pass on through. He's expecting a here comes Hamilton moment, except it's here comes Mad Dog and around completely wrong circuit. Here's Last Gen Newt looking towards the inside. They're still in the slipstream, but again, this turn 1 in the wet weather is not inviting any moves for any of these drivers.
No, absolutely not. You see Mad Dog, though, went a bit deep. He got himself a bit out of the position now for this battle now, as Last Gen Newt trying to use as much slipstream on behind for Aria as he can. He's going to try and make the same move once again now, heading for turn 3. He goes, using the inside line, clipping the apex, and makes it stick. But Aria will have a little bit of slipstream. In fact, it goes a little bit wheel to wheel now, heading through this the straight now, with turn 4 is going to be a win for them. Aria will have the outside line, will carry more speed. However, he knows this. He's going to go defensive, holds on to the apex, and pushes Aria just a little bit, and that will allow for Last Gen Newt to get himself up into P6.
A little bonk on the front wing as they head through that corner. Aria has dropped down in position, needs to maintain that pressure on the gearbox again. A fantastic move from Last Gen Newt. I really was not expecting that to happen there at all, but the patience worked. He waited for the moment for the gap to open and made it stick as well, and is already building a gap. 7/10 already between himself and Aria, and now Mad Dog will have to have a go at fighting against Aria again now, as Last Gen Newt will now be looking at the back of the Ferrari in front of him and hoping to chase that down as well. We are starting to see quite a few gaps appearing between all the drivers now, as Aria picking up a multiple penalties warning. Mad Dog dropping back a little bit. It seems like a few corners in the wet are just tripping him up at the moment. Aria a second behind Last Gen Newt. And pending anything else, I think we're already seeing a little bit of an order forming in terms of what we could be seeing by the end of this race. There's only one thing, one obstacle that could really mess this up for quite a few people, and that is going to be the pit stop. And when you decide to take it, or perhaps do you even take it at all? Of course, it's wet weather. You don't have to take the pit stop if you don't.
Of course, you take it. Of course, you take it.
I mean, It's going to be tricky. Maybe we see the rain lighten up a little bit later, and maybe Inter's coming to play as well. There are so many permutations that are available now, but at the moment,
Sir, I beg, please don't give these drivers any ideas. I don't want to monocle.
Guys, I'm just saying the green tires look awfully cool. As hoping for
oh my god!
Oh, Mad Dog! Let's see. I'm just saying, Mad Dog, the Inters could be worth the risk, as Ender Epic also moving into the pit lane. Could be. I'm just wondering, are we going to see some extra front wing changes? There we go. Oh, Mad Dog has front wing damage. That's going to be replaced. Do we see anything behind? No, the Papaya is going to be fine. No front wing change there. It looks like it's going to be the Papaya moving up. And no, they're inside one another, and it's just about Mad Dog will be ahead.
He's on the Inters. Mad Dog's to the Inters. He listened to you.
Let's go. Both of them have moved on to Inters. Oh, now the race opens up. Now everyone is going to be watching these two. If they have realized that both of them are on inters, the question is going to be said, what will the lap times be like? Will this be worth? As Ender Epic, that camera angle is rather confusing because it looks like they're moving alongside each other for a moment. I think they are, but of course they just sort of realize, okay, the move is not there. I'm not ahead. I have to pull out. So it's a bit of a confusing camera angle for a moment. I get excited thinking, oh, we're going to see some action, we're going to see some drama. No, they just relax, and of course, smartly, we'd still have another 23 laps to go here.
Dasher's in the pits now.
They just decide to relax, and Dasher taking...
Everyone's going to go theatres now.
There is a question I think still that needs to be posed.
Ari's in the pits now as well. Ari's in the pits as well.
So there's still a question here. What times are these guys going to set? Mad Dog's setting purple. I think this is a perfect time. If Mad Dog sets the fastest lap here, I think we're going to see a lot more people dive into the pit lane and pick up inters as well. Like I was saying, the green tires look awfully cool, lads. Mad Dog crossing the line. It is not going to be a fastest lap. It's not going to be announced. But I reckon that perfect first sector, second sector going purple there, that is going to entice a lot of people into this if they could see it on the timing sheets. So we'll be looking up and down the order. Who is going to make the move now? Enter Epic definitely looking a lot speedier on these intermediate tires. Having to move a little bit wide there to allow Mad Dog to take the corner. Does have a little bit of a chance to put the power down, though, as the outer line does. Trying to follow along Mad Dog once more. Heading down towards turns 4, 5, and in towards the Rauchwerf curve section of this track. As Ender Epic still will be lining up a move, has dropped a little bit of time, but I think the Inters have picked up the mood for Ender Epic at least to keep going and keep fighting. Finn also moving into the pit lane. We'll have to see what he goes for. I reckon the Mercedes driver might be following along with the Inters strategy. I think
Mad Dog goes to the fastest time here because he's already purple through that second sector once again, coming up for the final curve of turn 9 and 10. That is going to put a lot of grip. Ender Epic just gone a bit sideways, actually come out for the final corner. That's going to put a deficit to him. Yep, there you go.
2 seconds. 2 seconds. That's not just a fast lap. That is a blisteringly fast lap, considering the rain that we have around this circuit. Quicks, already we're seeing Dasher move back up past Quicks in P7. The Wets versus Inters fight is going to be on.
Oh, to the inside goes Ender Epic up for turn 3. They're going to go wheel to wheel for the straight, and Ender Epic gets up to 9th.
Oh my goodness. Here we go. Here we go.
There we go. Cameron Still's now heading into the pits now. Where is he going to come out from? Because a lot of people have already been on the Inters beforehand. So has he made it too late, I wonder? Into the pits goes the Red Bull driver.
I think he might be fighting Dasher and Aria. Well. He might be fighting Dasher and Aria, but it is a very small pit lane. These two drivers are going to be sort of the barometer of how fast you can go on these intermediate tires, as both of them have already moved onto them. Mad Dog up past Quicks, I believe Quicks with the time penalty as he moved into pit lane. No, Dasher 114.3, a new fastest lap set by the Ferrari driver. And it's just Geek in terms of that top order, who hasn't, of course, taken the pit stop yet for the Inters. Of course, he just needed to wait until Cameron had already taken his. Good teammate moment for him there, just sort of holding off before his championship leader teammate makes his stop. But we are seeing a lot of this midfield pack have now compressed together. Aria, big advantage over Josh as well. That was a good undercut from him. 2 laps prior to Josh, and he's overtaken him and does have a 1.5 second gap. These drivers all together now on the Inters, and it suddenly, from a race that looked a little bit stagnant, we had quite a few second plus gaps being generated by drivers having very good races, have now all of a sudden everything in the midfield has gotten a lot more interesting and a lot more vibrant in terms of the fights we could be seeing in that order.
Blows the positions all the more wide open now. Geek is now into the pits now, having to overcut now. I think is going to be probably the biggest loser. He was in the projection for P3, but he did gain a lot of positions though in the wets, so he's definitely got the skills to hang up. Got a first retirement coming up there, and that's the safety car. I think he... It must have been a big crash coming out of turn 8 for Finn because it's brought the safe. It's on track. That makes sense. So now the safety car is now deployed. So that means for it's James, Quicks, and Atomic Fire.
Well, Alpha getting a 5-second penalty.
Severe collision with with Cameron Searle. So that must be under the safety car. Yeah, there we go. So it's James and Quicks and Atomic know they have to pit for those inters because it's clear they're the most advantageous now. Safety car is out, and God, I'm interested. Alpha colliding with Cameron. Yeah, it was. He was. I think it was on the verge of lapping, and then he came to unlap himself and must have had a collision that way. Safety cars slowly come out though. Cameron leads with Joe second, Dasher third. Geek didn't actually lose many positions. He still got himself up into fourth. Aria fifth. Wooly in sixth. Oh, Alpha's got another.
I think the big winner out of that is Aria. Definitely advantageous going for the early pit stop, and then all of a sudden people were tripped up by a safety car, which is now going to reset the order a little bit. Everyone's going to have a little bit of a reset moving into this part of the race. We have new positions that everyone is in going into the restart around a still very, very wet Austria Grand Prix circuit.
Absolutely. Atomic Fire, I think, comes out onto the pits just ahead. Does not being lapped just quite yet. Safety car, period. Must say, 13 drivers so far that are still on track. I must say, I am very impressed, given the near chaos that we've seen in the start with Alpha colliding with Aria and Geek. It's actually amazing how with Alpha colliding with Geek and Aria that they've ended up in 4th and 5th respectively. Maybe it was a good luck.
We've almost resetted the start of the race order. We have Cameron back in staying in first. Started on pole, of course. Joe in second. The only sort of changes are sort of this section with Dasher in third, Geek in fourth. Of course, as you said, big winner out of this entire weather situation is Geek. He moved up in the wet weather quite a lot. I'll be wondering if he does get a podium. We'll have to ask him about if he'd done any wet weather training around this circuit or whether he's just that good around in the wet. Then we got Aria P5. Like we've said a few times now, big winner with that safety car scenario. Josh in P6. He's not going to be too happy with watching the championship almost slip away at this point with him P2, joint P2 with Ben. Ben, of course, not around this week. Last Gen Newt and Ender Epic, the two papayas, can't be separated at the moment. Mad Dog P9, James P10, Quicks P11, P12 out Atomic Fire, and P13, a drive-through penalty at the moment given to Alpha, as finally we see the cars start to stack up in formation for a restart on lap 18.
It's going to be interesting to see because we saw before in the start straight with how a bit chaotic not only turn 1 was, but turn 3. Are we going to see something similar here? Because everyone has been bunched up now, less racing room amongst each other, and another key factor as well that we haven't really actually mentioned because of the wet weather, the spray. The spray gives a low visibility to the drivers further back, which means that they're unable to look ahead as clear as the other cars in front. So is that going to be playing a factor into, how cautious or how dangerous that they'll have to be heading through turns 1 and 3? Is that maybe why Alpha misjudges braking zone, I wonder? I think it could be, you know?
I think that makes sense. I think just not being used to the amount of spray. I mean, a lot of these drivers most likely have done time trial practice at some point in time around this circuit. They will have. But doing it in the wet weather, in a race with the spray and with the slightly greasier conditions, that is a whole different ball game that they are going to have to get used to. I will say, being in game right now, and I think you'll probably be seeing in the spectator view that we have, I think the clouds are getting just a little bit lighter. So the question might be now, are we seeing it dry up slightly? It does look like we have less rain droplets coming down on screen. I haven't checked the weather report, I will admit, but maybe this is a bit of a weather copium, especially as a Brit. Could be seeing a little bit of dry, a little bit of wet, of sun coming out later on. It does look just grey enough that we might be sitting around in the rain for quite a bit longer, though. So I wouldn't get your hopes up. This might be inters for the rest of this race. Cameron still, of course, leading the way. I think Aria has actually technically set the fastest lap, even under safety car conditions. So the fastest lap currently being held by him at the moment, as all these drivers continuing to move around underneath the safety car. I'm just looking at the position changes that we have throughout this. Geek up 4 positions. Josh down 4. Mad Dog also down 4. Those two being the biggest losers out of all of this. Out of the first 19 laps we've had, those two are going to be very, very frustrated with how everything has worked out. There you go. Just double checked. Aria with the fastest lap, a 1:14.1. That should tell you how slow this race has been under the full wet conditions that we've had, as we do have there's safety car in this lap now, as all drivers will now be following around Cameron on this circuit. We do have Atomic Fire, I believe, at the back, who'll be joining the rest of the queue. Alpha's already in the queue at the back. Where will Cameron decide to go? Is it going to be most likely out of the Red Bull Mobile, I think, down in turn 10, maybe a little bit earlier at Rind. Turn 9, don't see anything earlier happening, in my opinion. So we are now heading towards that first jumping opportunity that I think could happen, as every driver following sight one by one. There we go, going into turn 9. That's the go time for Cameron. Everyone will follow behind. Already a slight gap being generated by Cameron up front, 7/10 as we start to begin. Josh picking up 3 seconds, picking up 3 seconds as well. Both the AlphaTauri drivers picking up 3-second time penalties at some point during this race. Cameron out through turn 1 unharmed. It looks like for the rest of these drivers, they're also going through this first section just fine. Going down the order, we have Dasher and Geek. Both will be fighting for the position. Who will win out in that fight? It looks like Geek on the inside, but Dasher will move around the outside. Behind is Aria, just bumping into the gearboxes, and Dasher will stay in P4 and fend off Geek for the moment. What will Aria do as he gets close to the gearbox? Just behind, we have Josh and Last Gen Newt battling out as well. Who's going to get win out in that? It looks like Josh just about does so, and we will have almost the same order after this safety cars come out as we do after the restart.
Pretty safe as well. Almost moves there between Geek and Dasher, and Newt and Josh definitely going to be carrying it out in the later stages, though they're still flying behind them and just trying to make the move as much as they can now, heading through turn 9 that they all go. Cameron so soon going to start his new flying lap now with his interest now, so see how this all goes. And there you go, the new fastest lap, 1:11.9. Amazing. That was under the safety car. Well, not under the safety car, just under the safety car. Restart now. Tension towards the back between Geek and Dasher now. They're really in the closing stages between those two now. I'm hoping to make the move now for turn 3. It's the move that Geek has always been doing to get in the positions, and here he goes now. He's going to go for the outside move this time. Does it even before the corner even reaches, and what a great move that is from Geek up into P3, back where he belongs.
The podium again consists of 2 Red Bull drivers and the Aston Martin of Joe. It's James fighting quicks throughout these corners. We still have this order of fights going on as well, from about P3 all the way down to P9. It is a train being generated at the moment. Everyone looking for just small moves to bother and just rush the players and drivers in front of them. All of them just automatically in a line, staying behind each other throughout all these corners. I think Josh needs to try and line up a move now against Aria as we are heading towards the turns 9 and 10, but none of those corners will be quite welcoming for an overtake. Dasher now starting to lose a bit of time between himself and Geek, already a second out, but just behind Aria, 4 tenths.
He's going to make his move on Aria now.
2 tenths. No, not quite, not yet. I think, like with everything, in these wet conditions, it's always about just watching and waiting for your opponent to make just one wrong move, slightly too late on the brake, slightly too early, then you sort of dive and go for it. And as we do see a move lined up down the inside, Aria off track, a slight touch allows Josh through. Just Josh at the moment. No, Last Gen Newt as well. Aria will now have to defend from the end of Epic, going in towards turn 4 and 5, but no, he'll be dropping back a little bit further. If Ender Epic can make this move stick, does so. Mad Dog could be following along on the inside. They'll be going side by side as they move down towards 6. Mad Dog just behind, the wheels banging front to rear. Aria remains in front and just survives for the moment.
You're talking about being patient, and yep, it is being patient that is what has unfortunately cost Aria is a bit too eager on the throttle, and that is what has cost him real big time to drop 2 positions there, all the way down to 8th. Very unfortunate there from Aria, who was arguably the biggest gainer from moving on to the inters, and now unfortunately he's paid the price for it. Now, as tension now draws to Willie, now making the move on Dasher, now heading through turn 1, he goes, no, he concedes now back to turn 1. He's going to try and look for turn 3. Yes, I know,
again, AO. Patience. Wait for the other driver to make the mistake. Stay on their gearbox until they have to try and make something dangerous. No. Did you get fooled by the camera angle as well?
Yes.
Aria going wide. Mad Dog is through. As we just caught the end of that on the screen, I think Aria definitely might be suffering from a little bit of floor damage. As down the inside, Josh goes finally. There's the move you're waiting for. There's the move.
And it finally works. It finally works. Willie's up into P4. Let's go.
Here we go.
I'm happy now. I can die in peace.
I tell you what, through this entire battle, we haven't noticed Geek actually approaching the back of Joe at the moment. About a 5/10 gap now. That has been cut down quite viciously by the Red Bull driver to the Aston Martin. We'll still have an eye on battle down to 4th, all the way down to about 8th now, as Aria has moved back quite a bit. As now we have Geek fighting off Joe. Could we be seeing a 1-2 for these Red Bull drivers? He is close enough to possibly be thinking of a move right now. I think he will, of course, be waiting for just a little bit of patience behind Joe. Will stay on the gearbox. Last Gen U looking to move down the inside of Dasher. Does stay there. And then goes side by side through the corner. And then he'll stay together. 3 has brought us quite a lot of action today. Will it bring us yet another overtake as we move through what would be a DRS section? Last Gen Newt staying on the inside and makes the move on Dasher and will get up into P5 as now the next Papaya will be trying to line up the Ferrari to see if they can make a move. They do dart to the inside but quickly move back just behind the Ferrari to get back into this train, keep the slipstream, stay in touch as Dasher still have been hurried and absolutely annoyed by every single driver behind. Will a move be made early by Ender Epic on Dasher now as he is 2/10 in here, that gearbox of Dashers. They move down to the home stretch, a little bit of slipstream. This could be the chance for a turn 1 move as he does move towards the inside. No, just waits and moves back to the inside, uses a slipstream to stay within touch, as we could be lining up a move as we go towards turns 3. It could be an early move as well. He's side by side, gets it done before turn 3. Like quite a few drivers today, he has managed to line up the move and get it done before that all-important turn 3 exit.
It's all the efficient ERS management that he's doing. Dasher's actually going to lose 2 positions now as Mad Dog's going to have the inside line heading through turn 4.
Gets it done.
In front of the corner, even moves. Oh, and he slides a little bit, but just about holds in for P7. Great move there from Mad Dog.
What a selection of moves to choose from for overtake of the day. I still have half an eye on that P2 battle. It's still about 5/10 between Joe and Geek at the moment. It doesn't seem like there's going to be a fight brewing just yet. Again, it's all about that patience as there is a collision in Sector 2. Alpha and Atomic Fire having a moment, and both of them will get started again. It will just be a caution at the moment. No safety car required for the 2 of them.
James seems to fire 3-second time penalty, his first one of the Grand Prix, but as you mentioned before, tension to Joe and Geek, though it is 5/10 though. Aria's another 3-second time penalty. That's up to 6 for him. But yeah, I think for Geek, I think he's just using the ERS. I think the thing is he depletes his ERS as much as he can. Heading for turn 3, that's how he's managed to get all the overtakes he has done in the past. But it's not quite working on Joe yet. The one that we saw before, which didn't quite work, was his best attempt. But he's definitely going to line up for something now. He's got 10 laps or so to do it now to catch up to Joe. In fact, if his pace is that good, he might even catch up to Cameron. Maybe.
It's about 50% ERS charge at the moment for Geek. And at the moment for Joe, it is still sitting at 86. He has managed to save it, and he's going to be using that all for defense at the moment. He does use a bit going through that section of corners. Cameron's on 40%. It's holding firm there. He is very relaxed up front. A 6-second lead. Are you kidding me, Cameron? It has been a very calm Grand Prix as we are looking down towards the home stretch. Both the Aston Martin driver and the Red Bull will be chasing each other down here. Geek will not make the move yet, but is in touch with the Aston Martin. We look towards turns 2 and 3. This could be the moment on the slipstream. Geek following behind, just not close enough just yet. And I don't think in these conditions you want to make that dive bomb. Just waiting again, waiting and watching from Geek as he still remains in P3.
So he's not going to do an alpha then?
I think everyone is discouraged from doing an alpha now, considering how we saw that happen on lap 1. Take a step back, AO. What fights how do we have going? What is the matches we will have to see? What are the duels going on? I think Enderepping and Mad Dog, that's very close. Last Gen Newt and Josh, those two are pretty close together. Joe and Geek, of course. The rest of them, it is going to be about trying to make up the gap slowly but surely to get within touching distance of the overtake to see if they can happen.
If Josh defends, it's gonna carry Ender and Mad Dog with him as well. It could be a possible 4-way for P4. If that's what Josh wants, it might put some favors to him because it is a second. But the more that he defends, the more the Ender claws up to Last Gen Newt. As now attention back to Geek once again, still trying to use the slipstream, still trying to claw back up to Joe, but it's still not just working for him. He's still got 8 laps though, but that time is slowly running down for Geek to try and get P2. It's going to be the highest position that he has gained this season if he does so. And it's all possible for him. He's a former race winner, and he's definitely talented here in the wet. He's done so by having the most amount of overtakes here on track in the wets. And he knows that he's really close to Joe in order to do it. Still just finding that gap behind him and just clawing up with that slipstream here and just keeping under that rear wing of the Aston Martin through the second sector here, where all that dirty air and that disadvantage for being behind sort of comes into play. But he knows that he'll just have 8 laps or so to make that move. And honestly, fingers crossed he will.
I think something brewing at the moment down the order. We have Enderepic and Mad Dog. Mad Dog 2 tenths behind as we start to head towards the last home stretch. What will be the exits like through this corner? Mad Dog taking a little bit more of the curb, maybe taking a little bit more speed, looking to make the overtake down into to turn 1. We'll just stay on that gearbox. This almost looks like bump drafting that you see in NASCAR as they will stay close together. It looks like Mad Dog will be lining up that overtake just before turn 3, heading down this straight. Across turn 2 they go as he moves towards the inside. There's the move alongside. We'll have the corner going to turn 3. Makes the move. What a move from Mad Dog as he gets past Last Gen Newt. Enderepic, I should say. See how is catching me out.
Enderepic, see how he defends though to try and cover his line, but that was actually an advantage to Mad Dog. Being out of the racing line actually is a huge advantageous position because in the wet weather there's more grip outside the racing line than there is on the racing line. So great there for Mad Dog to get himself up into P6. He's got a bit of a charge to catch up to Last Gen Newt and Josh. Although it was 1 second, it's now 1.7 seconds now. So it's going to be a bit hard to see if he'll be able to make any last-ditch attempts now to try and claw up to those positions now. But we shall see. Still 6 laps to go.
Has used a bit of the RS down to about 20% for Mad Dog, so everything has been used just to make that overtake, and now is starting to get used to get close to Last Gen Newt. So he has to get close up to Last Gen Newt to recover that ERS and then line up the move. That's going to be the story for him today. We continue to see fights just slowly starting to come together. Slowly, these drivers get closer and closer to each other before we see attempted overtakes. Last Gen Newt and Josh, that battle is sort of stuck around the 4 tenths gap. Joe and Geek have started to sit around the 5 to 6 tenth gap. And looking down the order, Mad Dog and Ender Epic, of course, they're going to stay close after that. Dasher and Aria also relatively close, but I think Aria, maybe with damage to the car, is not going to be quite the same driver against a Dasher who, although has lost quite a few places from the start of this Grand Prix, is still going to be one to watch in P8 at the moment. Just to recap the entire race, Cameron has started in P1 for the safety car, and has just remained there just fine throughout this race, has built this 8-second gap as we see Last Gen Newt and Josh. This is going to be the next fight, the next duel that we see cooking up together. Geek has had an absolutely terrifying race in P3. In P4, lost 2 positions, but Josh is still in a fight for the podium as Last Gen Newt again just stays within the gearbox range just for another lap to wait. We have hit the lap 31 mark. I mean, this has gone fast so quickly for these drivers. We've had one tactical and strategic decision to be made with the Inters move that has worked for quite a lot of drivers. Alpha picking up another 3 seconds for multiple time penalties. But at the moment, I have to say, in the wet weather conditions, sometimes you just get people who are pure driving to get their position, and I feel like that's kind of what it's been today, especially for Geek. 5 positions in terms of the start to now. What a race he's had around a wet Austria Grand Prix.
Seeing one of his best probably performances as well. Cameron with the fastest lap as well, just on lap 32 or 36, whenever the Inters are just getting a bit more warmed off, but it's from the, the grooves on it coming up. Dasher with another 3-second time penalty, well, his first 3-second time penalty now. But you must say, as well, it's impressive that for Cameron, Joe, Geek, and Last Gen, and Atomic as well, to not have time penalties as well, because again, less grip on the wet racing surface, more susceptible to track limits as well, and the fact that these guys have managed to keep on track for as long as they have, for 32 laps, really remarkable in my honest opinion.
They've kept it clean, and you know what, I reckon by the end of this Grand Prix we're going to see quite a lot of track position and final timing changes, of course, because of that. There's that thing on my screen saying a little bit of lag. It looked like Josh was going wide there, but no, staying on the racing line nicely to keep Last Gen Newt behind. But yeah, we are going to see those drivers just behind. Last Gen Newt is going to be definitely rewarded. Even if he just stays very close behind Josh at this point, he is going to be rewarded with P4, P1, 2, and 3. I think those are off the table, unfortunately, with Josh moving back about 4 seconds. P1 is definitely out of the question. I mean, 9 seconds. Bar Cameron suddenly deciding to take a trip off-road. That is going to be it for this race. He's already catching up to one of the Mercedes at the back. I believe that's going to be Atomic Fire, who goes slow, allows the race leader to move past. As still Joe and Geek close together. That might be the fight that we watch in the last 3 laps in the dying embers of this race, as almost there. Again, the camera angle. My goodness, it does catch me out as it looked like Last Gen Newt was making a move down in turn 3 to get past Josh on track and maybe mount a comeback. I mean, with Joe slowing up Geek possibly, you could see at Last Gen Newt, if he gets past on track, maybe the last 3 laps, it could be a 3-way fight for that podium.
Oh!
It does move down the inside. Oh, Josh got wide. Oh no, it's lag again. It's lag again. It's ghosting. Oh, we've been fooled so many times this race, whether it be the camera angles or just pure lag to give us that excitement. But at the moment, it feels like this race is slowly coming together for all these drivers. Everyone's finding their position. It is just going to be about keeping it clean all the way to the end. Ender Epic can't do that, adding another 3-second time penalty on. Yeah, I think that a lot of track position, a lot of these points in terms of the championship are going to be decided by where they end up after penalties.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think a lot of these positions, for Willie as well, he really needed this position gain because this is the first time in a while that his, for P2 that Ben has not appeared. But now it looks like if Joe remains in P2, that's going to excel him up into that fight as we were talking about earlier on. And for Willie, it's not really exactly the kind of place that he needed. He needed his maximum points as much as he can. And I think he'll definitely know that he would have been, more or less talented enough for a podium place, but it's unfortunate that he just pitted a bit too late with the inters, and he's just going to try and capitalize on much as he can now.
I think it's going to be hoping that Geek makes that last overtake on Joe, as we are on lap 35 for Cameron up front. Joe and Geek, they're within touch with each other. DRS enabled. We have gotten dry enough with the last 2 laps to go. We could be seeing the last spin of drama between these 2 guys, as definitely Geek will get DRS here. It's just when it activates, will he take advantage? Cameron is already out of sight, already going through turns 3 and 4 as these 2 continue to battle down towards this DRS straight here. We do have the yellow flag down at that corner, turn 3. It will be just a slow Mercedes driver allowing others through.
Other DRS. Ooh. And it gets even closer as well. And now that's going to be a really big advantage to Geek now. All this is going to be brought up now, heading for the second sector as well, because Joe will have that clean air. Geek will just need to use the DRS to catch up as much as he possibly can, but he'll know he have 2 DRS in advantages on the final lap now to make his move onto Joe. I am so excited now. He's going to get into P2, make this a first ever Team 1-2 for Red Bull. And man, this is going to be absolutely incredible for Geek, who has never really much have had a chance onto the podium all season long.
Alpha.
We'll finally get it.
Alpha's on soft.
What?
That's amazing.
Okay.
Alpha in the Williams takes the fastest lap away from Cameron with a blistering soft lap. As I think even with DRS, Geek is a little bit too far behind. Really needs to use the back-to-back straights to get past the Aston Martin driver. We are still looking at, on the last lap around the Red Bull circuit, the possible moments that we could see a Red Bull 1-2 around here in Austria.
It's too far away, friend.
It's too far. It's done. I think Joe has done enough defending in the rain to keep Geek at bay. He just needs to manage to keep this straight. In the drying conditions, those inters can easily overheat, and he needs to stay cool in these situations. But I tell you what, Cameron, out of turns 9 and 10, he's kept cool today. No matter in rain, come shine, Cameron wins the Austrian Grand Prix, and Joe will be moving on through. It might be a 12-second gap between P1 and P2, but the Aston Martin makes it around, defends from Geek, but the podium's made up. Ryan, Joe, Geek, Josh will be behind, but will be taken down to 5th thanks to the penalty. Last Gen Newt with a big P4 for their championship hopes. That's a massive bit of defending from Joe in terms of the overall championship. Its drivers going side by side down towards the line. Quicks, I think he might have just made the overtake on the line, just penalties taking it away from him. I'll tell you what, there's one last bit of drama here. Dasher is out there on the soft tyres. Could he be getting the fastest lap points and taking away from Alpha, going through turns 9 and 10? The last twist in the tail. Will this fastest lap be going red? Yes, just about. The Ferrari takes the fastest lap. But after all the drama, it's been no problem. Cameron wins a 4th on the trot as Spielberg sees a winner from the Red Bull team.
Congrats. Honestly, bloody incredible from him. 12 seconds and 2 seconds faster in the first few laps in the wets. He really does show just how bloody talented he is. And, you know, all the chips are against him, with pole position not being, you know, in a track where it's very easy to lose the lead from pole position. Absolutely incredible. He gets that well-deserved champagne in the end, and another win to his tally as he itches his hand ever so closer to the BUSR Spring Championship.
That's an even bigger win when you just look down the order. Josh moving down into P5. Joe might be gaining a little bit points, but it's not on Cameron where the points are gained. And it's just the penalties lighting up across the timing sheets. Those turned out to be a massive factor today. The track limits catching a lot of people out in the end. But by the end of it, Cameron stayed cool in the wets. A 1:08 set by Dasher takes the fastest lap. That'll be a nice point for him to take home with another race start. But he's not going to be happy. After starting P4, Dasher, the shining light of his race being a fastest lap, that's going to be rough for him. But in terms of everyone else, Geek, my goodness, if we're talking driver of the day, we can't jokingly say chaotic now. I mean, it's been a few races now, so we can't say him, but it has to be Geek after a stunning drive and so many positions gained. He's the driver of the day easily.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Arguably one of his best drives in his BUSR career, to say the least. In what was a kind of a mediocre season in the start of, he really comes into the second half of the season absolutely flying. Not decent, pretty decent in qualifying, midfield pack, but God, in that rain, he was a man on fire, and genuinely like. That's incredible. And it's going to be really big for his championship pursuit. Well, for P4 or P5 against, I think he'll overtake last gen Newt now for P5 in the championship. So, seriously, bloody kudos to him. Geek, thank you so much for making this so much exciting. Honestly, having to commentate him and having to see all those moves for turn 3, he did it so effortlessly as well, which is why I'm absolutely astounded for like how well he really drove today.
Yeah, I mean, turn 3, it caught quite a few people a cropper, so he just did it with so much control to get it through. I mean, props to everyone who made that turn 3 overtake. It is extremely difficult to do, especially in wet conditions. We saw that with Alpha, the very first lap. That could have been a stunning move in the dry because, of course, a lot more grip. He moves to the inside, gets to the inside, and stays there. It could be a fantastic dive bomb, but no, in the wets, you start aquaplaning and you sent into the drivers in front of you. So unfortunately, it didn't work out for Alpha, but as soon as it became duels, as soon it was you were sort of out of the pack and it was a 1v1 down into turn 3, that's when we started seeing the incredible overtakes and the potential that you have around this circuit. Let's you know what, before we call everyone in, let's take a look at the championship at the moment, the feedback, not the feedback, the current sort of look back to the past with Cameron. The last 3 races were his. If it gets brought up, no, there we go. There we go. So here's our season so far. Of course, we don't have the results added yet from our visits to Austria, but as you can see, Cameron, Canada, Great Britain, Kota, now Austria added to it, and of course, Joe getting a second P2 in a row. And now we have a new podium sitter as well in terms of Geek. He'll be joining Last Gen Newt, Alpha, Josh and Ben for sitting in P3 for this season. And of course, taking a look at the standings as well, the brief snippet that you get in the bottom corner, this is a big race for Joe as well. It is about 20 points separating himself and Josh, so that'll be closed down just a little bit more.
It's now 9. It's now 9 seconds between him and Josh now.
And of course, Ben will be slipping down. Geek will be moving up quite a bit. That draw against Last Gen Newt on 70 points, that's going to be broken up. And now Geek will probably be not around Ben, but he's going to be just very short on his tail for trying to overtake. So we also have a new fastest lap holder. I mean, Dasher adding his name to that list of Tom and Cameron around the circuit. And of course, Cameron getting his second pole position. So now we go. There's the recap of the season with Austria added. Let's get on to the drivers and welcoming them in. So in P3, we welcome in Geek after a stunning race today. Geek, what is it about the wet weather, man? That was a stunning drive, my friend, around the Red Bull circuit.
No idea. Honest to God, no idea. Nice to be back on the podium, though. No, I don't know what it was. I've recently upgraded equipment as well to try and phase out these wheel disconnects. In the process, I've got a completely different rim as well to try and isolate any and all problems. I'm still trying to get used to it, so I'm not fully comfortable, but just everything came together so nicely. Just I could feel the car beneath me. I could feel when the grip was there, when it wasn't, when I was locking brakes. The setup itself was definitely engineered more for the heavy wet, and you could probably see that when we went almost dry at the end. Like even with DRS, it was only just keeping me afloat. But no, just in the heavyweight situation, just it felt so good. And then Inters, it struggled a tiny bit. I did make some adjustment to the front wing to kind of compensate and give me some more rotation. But no, I'm coming from P8 to P3 and almost challenging for P2. You know, like I couldn't be happier, to be honest. That's a solid result.
Started the race over in P8, which was midfield, but given that we've seen Austria before, like it's a bit hard to, make up such great positions in, such a few corners. But you were blistering throughout the first few laps to climb up the positions. Coming up to the race, having started mid-pack, did you ever think you would ever have a chance at the podium?
I'll be honest, I thought possibly the peak I could do would be maybe P4, P5. Mostly because I know Josh was there and he's insanely quick around Austria. Dasher has also recently beaten me quite often this season as well. And again, I think he's somewhat decent around Austria. I think he likes it, but I can't confirm that. Now, if you saw the time trial leaderboard, the midfield pack today was just divided by almost less than a tenth, maybe a tenth and a half at most.
Yeah,
so,
it's extremely close, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just, as I say, just everything just came together nicely. And, I had the confidence to make the moves and get on the throttle and just try and do my best, really, to climb up. And, yeah. I mean, I already know the title fight for me is already gone. I'm kind of reaching the twilight of my BUSR thing, being a master student and all, but no, I'm here for fun, and that was, I wish I could do a race like that again. That was so good.
Well, as a new man in the new rig, I think the rest of the season looks fantastic for you if you can maintain these sort of performances. We have 3 races left, of course. Spa next week, one of the longest races, I think actually the longest race and track in terms of single lap on the entire calendar. And then, of course, we've got 2 street circuits with Singapore and Las Vegas. How are you feeling ahead of those last 3 rounds in terms of, I would say, possibly the podium fight in terms of the championship?
Yeah, I mean, it's also difficult to gauge without Ben being here as well, because I know he is really quick, like Joe and Dasher and, Wooly. So there's honestly, anyone could end up on the podium in these final few races. It's just a case of, personally anyway, just making the right strategy calls, nailing the setup, nailing each and every break in zone apex, pretty much everything. But I think it will be getting somewhat closer, I hope. Just, yeah, it's going to be exciting, that's for sure.
Well, there you go. A fantastic race around Spielberg. Thank you very much, Owen, Geek, for joining us.
Either's fine. Either's fine.
Well, thank you very much for joining, and congratulations for the podium.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys.
And next up, P2 last time out, and P2 against A. We got Joe joining us in a moment. Joe, quite an interesting race today. Some very good defense at the end, but in terms of the middle of that, seeing suddenly the inters become viable, what was the strategy calls like in terms of the race for you?
Yeah, I saw a couple of the inters guys were putting in some pretty decent lap times, so I was like, yeah, it might be a smart idea to not sit out on slow tyres. So I pit same time as Cameron, coincidentally. Geek stayed out a lap longer, which in the end meant nothing because there was a safety car. So maybe staying out actually would have been better. But had there not been a safety car, I think maybe a lap before when I pit would have been good. The wets had degged off quite a bit, so they were a bit slower. But yeah, driving cars and stuff.
This is your heading into the second half of the season. Previous race, you've had your first podium in what was since the first race. Now you've continued yourself on a podium streak now, and this is actually your second consecutive P2. Congratulations. Looking for the rest of the remaining races in the calendar, would you say that you have a decent chance of continuing on that streak potentially for that podium?
What have we got?
Got
Spa
Spa,
next, and Singapore and Las Vegas.
Rubbish at Spa. Singapore is how unlucky do you get when there's a safety car, and Vegas is gambling. So, up to fate, I guess you could say. But pretty crap at Spa, so that'll be a thing.
Yeah, it did seem like coming into this race you had a lot more confidence, so it's not looking good at Spa then. So that's sort of the rest of the season sorted out. I mean, we don't see wet weather that often, so tell me, how much do you actually practice with the wet weather? Because I said at the start of the broadcast that I've pretty much heard everyone say, oh, we don't practice in wets. We do a bit of time trial in the dry, job done. What was the reaction from almost everyone when he sort of cut to the race screen after a dry qualifying and you see, oh, that is torrential British summer rain coming down in Austria? What was it like in terms of the drivers? What was your reaction?
Yeah, well, it was a bit moist. Normally, I'm quite happy when there's a bit of rain. I tend to be a little bit better in some aspects of the rain. Not so much around here. It's normally the traction limited track, like I don't know, some traction limited track that exists somewhere. That I get a bit more of an advantage from traction, which is just an inherent controller thing. I think you get a bit more feel, and it's naturally what I'm a bit better at anyway. But there's about 1.5 traction zones here. So I was like, I like the wet. Wet's good. Not going to complain. I do no practice, of course, like everyone else. No one really pays mind to it. But yeah, I was like, that's nice. So you get your wet stuff on, and then you're like, okay, time to go do some qualifying. And then you see it's drenched, and you're like, okay, good. It's normally the brakes that are the scariest, especially on that first lap. They are. Turn 3 is interesting. Poor Mad Dog did not have fun.
I think turn 3, lap 1 was quite interesting today. I think someone
Thanks, Alpha.
I think someone went well, Alpha went Bottas bowling, so I appreciate him for adding some drama to lap 1. But Joe, that's it from us on the desk. Thank you very much for joining us. P2, congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
And now, last up, in terms of the podium interviews, the guy who just drives and gets the win. It might as well call him Max Verstappen as well as Ryan Gosling. Cameron, welcome to the podium once again. For yet another week in a row, you join us in the P1 interview spot. I asked Joe this same question, and I think I have to ask you as well, because you do a bit of practice, mostly around the dry in terms of quali practice and that sort of thing. What was the reaction after it suddenly cutting to the race screen and you saw, oh goodness, that's, to use Joe's words, a little bit moist?
There was a little bit of joy. I like the wet. Yeah. We kind of half knew it that it would be wet. We saw the track temperature drop by 7 degrees or something. So we knew it was going to be wet, but boy, was it wet.
I think we had a very similar reaction where we saw rain and thought, oh, good, Inters. And then we see the actual screen and it's just blue all the way down.
Yeah, Inters would have been like slicks at the start there. Yeah, it's annoying with the safety car that it did go to dries. I lost the fastest lap, but yeah, that was a fun race.
The guy at P1 gets frustrated that he loses 1 point with the fastest lap.
It cost me a Grand Slam, so.
This has been your first P1 since Canada. Would you say that you do, in terms of your qualifying performance, would you say you fare a bit better in shorter tracks than compared to medium or long range tracks, would you say, in your own opinion?
Not really. I think, well, I didn't get to do my usual sillies because we knew it was going to be wet, so save the inters. So I did actually get a few extra laps in qualifying, and I think had the others been on full dry setups, it would have been a bit closer in quali. But we were all on wet setup, so it was just who had the most confidence for the different aero.
Yeah, I think I thought my time from driving last week was a little bit too close to everyone else with me on the dry setup. In terms of the championship, we do have 2 street races. You're famous for finding your way into walls, but we do have Spa next week. In terms of the rest of the season, surely you're half thinking, I've got one hand on the championship already, with the last 3 races incoming.
Yes, but Vegas.
Yes, but Vegas.
Yes, but Vegas. No, I really like Singapore. That's the one I'm really looking forward to. Spa's I know a couple of the others are really quick on time trial, so we'll see how that one goes. And then Vegas, if I can keep it out of the turn 2 wall, I should be okay. Fingers crossed.
Well, it doesn't seem we have anything else. Leave it up for AO, but he's not going in for questions at the moment. Anyway,
no, there's nothing else to really ask. I mean, other than how did you do it?
Adrenaline and panic.
There you go.
The number of times I nearly joined the Joe Geek battle from the lead was a bit worrying.
Well,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you just managed to drive today again, so I think you've deserved keeping the Ryan Gosling name in Discord and in game for another week, my friend. It is Spa next week, but thank you very much for joining us on the Austria podium.
No worries, thank you guys.
So another podium for Cameron, another win to add to the record books, and I have to say, it is one hand on the trophy already. For Cameron in P1, just the 4th on the trot. There is, I have to say, with the last 3 races, I don't see there being anything real that will make him truly suffer any points loss. I mean, as he said, he's not a fan of Spa. He sees a lot of faster drivers going around Spa, but when it comes down to it, the points lead that he has over everyone else heading into that track, do we really see him get himself into a points deficit against any of his championship contenders? It is a question, but to me, yeah, I don't see him getting into a massive deficit against anyone else that will cause him to worry going into Singapore and Vegas. So, of course, it's still possible. Anything's possible. There are still walls around every single circuit, and let's be honest, we've seen a lot of crashes in real life F1 around the Spa circuit that could mean that Cameron gets tripped up in the virtual Grand Prix that we have. So I would say that even though it's not likely, there are still going to be question marks. And in terms of that, you're still going to have to tune in for round 6 at Spa-Francorchamps next week. AO, any final thoughts as we close out on Austria?
Second half of the season is underway here for the BUSR, and honestly, this has provided absolutely complete exciting action here for what is set to kick off a very exciting second half of the Spring Championship over. Cameron Searle, as you mentioned before, only has one hand on the championship trophy, but that doesn't mean that all the other positions are safe. After all, Joe has gotten himself very close to, well, has actually overtaken Willie now, so he's done very good for his part now, but Willie can hopefully try to climb back as much as he can. Geek, on the other hand, he's only 10 points now behind Ben in the championship now after his podium win, so that itself is going to be very exciting. And Last Year also gets some very decently valuable points as well for the championship. So all in all, I'm really excited for how well this championship has gone. As Geek says, there's been like amazing talent all the way throughout the grid, and hopefully it'll all be the same for Spa, which goes on from what was the shortest track in Austria. We now tend to, as you said before, the longest track in the F1 calendar for Spa-Francorchamps.
So Assetto Corsa on Monday, so AO will be there. Make sure you check that out.
No.
But in terms, AO will not be there. He's decided not to turn up, and he's leaving Assetto Corsa. Anyway, BUSR F1 Championship for Spring 2025. The action continues next week. As we said, it's Spa. We'll see you then.
There is no place and no moment in history where I could stand and say, a wish begins here, now.